Greetings, welcome, Vanakkam. The protest under the auspices of the Cockroach Janata Party is still going on in the capital city of India. The organizers of the protest, a protest which is gathering momentum, I am told, a protest with which the youth of this country from across the states and union territories of India resonate, and a protest with which the public at large has come to associate themselves with emotionally. The main demands of the protest are number one, the resignation of the Minister of Education or the Minister of Human Resource Development, and then the revamping of the testing system. And now, of course, the additional demand, besides the demand that the 20-odd students who committed suicide because of their utter and unbearable frustration with this mounting corruption in the conduct of the Neet exam should be brought to books. And now the added demand that those who perpetrated brutalities on the protesting students, protesting youth, should be punished. But from my point of view, none of these will do. The real issue is not here. The real issue is not Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan. And there I agree with the BJP that merely sacking the minister concerned, whether he is the minister concerned, is a very significant question. I may come to that a little later. I'm convinced that he is not the minister concerned. He may not have had much to do with it. However, sacking Dharmendra Pradhan has very little effect on solving this problem. From my point of view, and I say this with all the responsibility I can muster, with such experience I have in this field, there is only one demand that I consider to be absolutely non-negotiable. And that is the complete abolition of the Neet examination itself. So long as Neet remains, believe you me, corruption will continue. No matter who is the Minister of MHRD, Minister of Education, no matter which testing agency is entrusted with this task, corruption will continue. There's a reason for this. There are many reasons for this, but let me only mention one reason for this. This is an area with tremendous scope for making huge amounts of money. You know that a medical admission to the basic course, MBBS, today has a price tag of well over 1 crore. So, people will readily cough up 30 lakhs, 40 lakhs, 50 lakhs to buy the question paper. And there aren't many people associated with the system who have the strength of character to say no to the temptation of raking in 100 crores, 200 crores, 500 crores. This is a simple fact. And therefore, I remember very well doing a video a long time ago saying that Neet will only have the effect of centralizing corruption. The two major arguments deployed in favor of introducing Neet as a system, a testing system to determine eligibility for medical admission. One is that it spares students of lots of trouble. Secondly, that true merit will be established. And I was in no doubt at all that neither of this was the goal. Now, let me give you a little history for those who have no idea of this. The practice of conducting an eligibility test on the basis of which admission to a medical course is to be done was not invented by the government of India. The first institution who pioneered this process in India is Christian Medical College, Vellore. I know this for a fact. Even as far back as the 50s of the last century, CMC Vellore was conducting entrance tests that went on for several decades. And during all of that time, there wasn't a single complaint from anyone from any source whatsoever that there was even an iota, a particle of corruption in any aspect of conducting the entrance test. It was a proven system, foolproof system, 100% honest system, effective system. But CMC Vellore was robbed of the right to conduct its own entrance test. For what reason? None of the arguments offered at that time had any relevance whatsoever to the intention to abolish or to deny the right, the legitimate right of an institution. Now here, let me connect it to minority rights. Christian Medical College, Vellore is a minority educational institution working in the field of medical education. As per the settled law in this country determined by TMA Pai Foundation versus the state of Karnataka, which is an 11 judges bench, which has not been overruled yet, a minority educational institution has the right to determine its own process of admission. This had already been stated unequivocally by the Supreme Court of India in the St. Stephen's College versus University of Delhi judgment of 1992. In fact, I handled that case. It was argued by very eminent lawyers, but I handled the nitty-gritty of that case. So I know it like the palm of my hand. The Supreme Court said that St. Stephen's, being a minority education institution, has the right to determine its own process of admission. And the TMA Pai Foundation judgment reiterated that right. So that is a law that holds the field. But when Neet was introduced for the first time in 2013, obviously it was litigated against. Various court cases followed. So temporarily it was kept in suspended animation. And it was reintroduced in 2016. And by 2019, through the Medical Council of India Act of 2019, it was made mandatory that all admissions to any medical course, MBBS course, undergraduate course, then later on, of course, the postgraduate course in medicine, must be done on the basis of Neet. So this is the brief history, 2013, 2016, 2019. Since then, what has happened, all of you know. Now, the point to be noted is this. When this was implemented, Christian Medical College went in appeal to the Supreme Court and argued very persuasively that this is a blatant violation of the minority rights of the institution. And since I have worked at the National Commission for Minority Education Institutions, and this is the area of my specialization, I can tell you without any hesitation that Neet violates minority rights, and minority rights are fundamental rights. However, the Supreme Court found it convenient to shut its eyes to this argument and virtually denied minority rights to Christian Medical College, Vellore, an institution that had an impeccable track record in medical admissions. So that institution was also forced into the so-called mainstream, with what consequences you all can see. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you really believe that if medical admissions are centralized, they will be above all possibilities of manipulation and corruption? Do you really believe that only people at the state level are corrupt? And when you go to the central level, everybody is an angel of ethics, of morality? It's utter nonsense. So, what was being done by inflicting this process of centralized testing process was virtually de facto centralizing corruption. In other words, monopolizing corruption. And that's exactly what has happened. Now, take this argument that introducing one central testing process will prove very convenient to the student. Ask a simple question. How many aspirants to medical admissions committed suicide before 2013? Not one. Not one. How many have committed suicide this year? About 20, which is convenient. Of course, you can always argue that if a young person commits suicide, all his problems are ended. If you argue like that, then I have nothing more to say. But otherwise, short of that absurd argument, the introduction of Neet has not meant any relief to anyone. Rather, it has meant a world of anguish and uncertainty to the youth of India. Now, here, consider for a moment what happened to the examination, class 12 examination conducted this year. The horrendous mismatch of answer books and the persons who wrote the answers. Answer book of A was ascribed to writer B. B's answer book went to somebody else. Now, I don't understand how this is possible unless there is some definite malicious intent in this. A computer program by itself does not do it. It has to be a machine will do only what man wants of it. There was an intent on the part of some individual or a group of individuals to bring about this complete disarray, which makes me say on the sidelines, political parties should have taken note of this, because this could also be a pointer to what is happening or what could be happening on account of electronic voting machine. You could be pressing one button and your vote may be falling somewhere else, exactly as it happened in the case of class 12 examination, which is my only basis for saying this. If it can happen in one place, why not in another? Or you can always argue that EVMs are standalone machines, etc., etc. But believe you me, one thing I know for sure, whatever man has created, man can manipulate. That's an absolute principle. There is no machine, there is no system made by man which man cannot manipulate. Now, if a free and fair election is definitely ensured by EVM, and the goal of the government, the BJP-led government, is to ensure that the elections conducted are all free and fair, they shouldn't have any great objection to reintroducing the ballot paper. But from BJP's point of view, reintroducing ballot paper is like death. Why? Why? It looks very suspicious. The stakes are so high because, quite obviously, the BJP gains enormously through the electronic voting machine. Now, I don't know the technical side of it. I can only go by a subjective impression, particularly based on the fact that the demands of the opposition parties to have these EVMs subjected to technical examinations by people in whom they have trust has been consistently refused. There are all sorts of loopholes in this. For example, I don't understand why, for days after the elections, all the elections are concluded, EVMs have to be kept stored. Even in a country like Pakistan, where elections are conducted through voting or through ballot papers, counting of ballot papers begins immediately after elections are over. If polling is over by 5 p.m., Latest by 5:30 p.m. counting begins, the same day. And by midnight or early morning, the country knows, the people all over Pakistan would know which way the country is going. In our case, elections are spread over many days, many weeks, and even after elections are over, all these EVM machines are kept here, there, and everywhere under safe custody, we are told. Anyway, let me not digress too much into this. So one thing I'm quite sure about, very clear about, the most important demand that the young people of India, the young aspirants of India must make is the complete abolition of Neet. So long as Neet remains, you have no chance, absolutely no chance. Now, at the moment, it is only that the question paper is leaked. But please understand, particularly in light of what happened in class 12 examination, that many other modes of manipulating the system are also possible. When you computerize anything, you're making the process vulnerable. And no matter what guarantees are proffered, a question mark will always remain. So, the idea of centralized testing is dangerous. First of all, it undercuts the federal structure of our polity. Secondly, it casts aspersions on all states and union territories, namely that they cannot be trusted, only the central government can be trusted. And above everything else, you judge a tree by its fruits. The outcome of this process has proved unequivocally disastrous. A greater crime on this nation cannot be even thought of. Okay, now for a moment, let me take up this question, whether Dharmendra Pradhan should be sacked or whether he should be asked to go. Well, my answer is yes and no. Yes, because at least it upholds to some extent, to a feeble extent, the idea of owning up, the idea of being responsible. If you are holding charge of a portfolio and you are not responsible for what happens under your watch, then it's a very strange situation indeed. It's another matter that as far as the present government is concerned, everything is decided somewhere else, it's implemented through some other channel, and the minister in all probability is only a rubber stamp. And particularly when a minister like Dharmendra Pradhan, who has had nothing to do with education, I don't know his expertise, the level of his expertise as far as education is concerned. In this country, it's become a style and a practice to appoint only those who are zero in the understanding of education as ministers of education. It happens at the central level, it also happens at the state levels. It simply shows the utter disdain or contempt with which we treat this most important aspect of development, namely education. Now, sacking him or asking him to leave will send a healthy message to the cabinet as a whole that you have to be alert. You cannot sit and warm a seat and not say that you're not responsible for the humongous malpractices that happen, not once, not twice, but 152 times. But not that all of them happened on Dharmendra Pradhan's watch. Why do I say that it does not help? It does not help because punishing Dharmendra Pradhan could have helped if a mistake had happened. I don't think that this leak of Neet examination papers was a mistake. Now, you might be shocked or surprised that I say so. What is a mistake? Mistake is what happens unwittingly. Whatever is done deliberately is not a mistake. Now let's try and understand this. By available evidence or the information that we have, over the last 10 years, question papers have leaked 152 times. Now, the first time it was a mistake. The second time it is not a mistake. Because if there is a minister, if there is a ministry, if there is a cabinet, if there is a prime minister who is concerned about the probity, the integrity and the inviolability, the truthfulness of a process, the first time a problem comes to notice, remedial action will be initiated, particularly that which affects the destiny, the welfare, the morale of the youth of India. The fact that for 10 years this has been allowed to go on and on and on without anyone punished makes me think very strongly that this is not a mistake. It's part of a plan. It's the system. People say that the system should change. This is the system. The system is in full flow. Otherwise, action would have been taken. For example, now the Prime Minister says that fast-track courts can be set up right now. Why couldn't it have been set up 10 years ago? Or are you to say that something becomes a problem only if the youth of India protests? If nobody protests, corruption is okay? Now, this is not convincing at all. And therefore, I don't believe that Dharmendra Pradhan is the main culprit here, or that even removing him from the office, the ministry, will have a significant bearing or significant outcome. That's the reason why I said at the outset that there's only one important demand. If that is not achieved, this problem will linger. There will be no end to this problem. And that problem is Neet should be abolished, and determination of eligibility must be decentralized. Well, then, of course, the argument would be that there will be corruption. There will be corruption even when it is centralized, except that the corruption is mega corruption. The whole country will come under the cloud of corruption through the centralized testing system. On the other hand, under the previous arrangement, there would have been only sporadic pockets of corruption here and there. Honest institutions like Christian Medical College, Fellow could have conducted their tests and chosen the very best for this noble profession. Now, they are also part of this corrupt system, not by choice, but by compulsion. Now, therefore, nothing short of abolishing Neet will do. And I'm surprised that the Cockroach Janata Party leaders are not even talking about it. If Neet is abolished, if Neet is not abolished and Dharmendra Pradhan is removed, your achievement will be zero. I'm not saying that he should not be sacked. I don't hold a brief for, but I'm convinced that the final outcome will be zero. Tomorrow, the whole system will make a huge comeback. It will be mega corruption as before, so long as Neet remains. Tamil Nadu has been extremely wise about it. That Tamil Nadu is the one state which has been crying hoarse for all these years, from 2013 onwards. And I'm glad that the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, Vijay, has once again addressed the issue. All states and union territories in one voice should demand that the eligibility testing system must be decentralized. If there is nobody honest in all the states and union territories of India, there can be nobody honest in the center also. It is as simple as that. And to say that, no, all of you are corrupt, we are angels, is stupid, downright stupid. So this is the issue. For anyone who may care to lend an ear, I repeat, unless and until Neet is established, there will be no end to this problem. But before I close, I also have to place on record my great disappointment, unbearable disappointment with the Supreme Court of India in this regard. The Supreme Court of India, with its eyes open, lent itself to the system, and in the process violated the fundamental rights of minority education institutions. And the legal position which the Supreme Court itself enunciated, which still is not revoked, that minority education institutions will have the right to have their own selection process. The testing of eligibility is an important aspect of the selection process. And the Supreme Court violated its own order. And how a bench comprising a smaller number of judges can overrule the judgment of an 11 judges bench in the TMA Foundation case, I don't understand. But the Supreme Court went out of its way to create the system or to legitimize the system. So the Supreme Court of India also has much to answer for. So unless and until some norms are upheld in our public life, there will be no improvement. Merely picking up some individual here, there, everywhere and backing them will not help. Certain fundamental principles have to be upheld. If the Constitution of India confers on religious and linguistic minorities certain rights, and if those rights have been examined under a microscope by the Supreme Court of India, and certain legal parameters had been established once and for all, then the Supreme Court of India must uphold it. In this case, it did not. And an institution like Christian Medical College suffered in the process. It still suffers. So let's be very clear. The intention in inflicting Neet on the youth of India was dubious. All the alibi offered did not constitute the truth. It was an excuse. The result is mega corruption. And what's the tune of money people make through this process, you can imagine, at various levels. Now, fast track court, what will courts do? I don't know. After all, courts can function only based on the investigation and the findings of the police department. Maybe a special investigation team would be constituted. But we are familiar with these processes. If none has been punished over 10 years, in spite of this long series of huge mega corruption, what is the ground on which we can hope that now something new will begin and the culprits will be brought to book? I don't have such hope. So, only one demand: abolish Neet. Abolish Neet. Abolish Neet. Save medical education. Do justice to the youth of India. Jai Hind.